الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره. نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله خير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Tonight inshallah we will start a very important topic and really very connected to our daily life and something that every Muslim must, and when I say must that means it's mandatory and it's fard ayn on every Muslim to know some of these issues. And when we say fard ayn, that means every Muslim is obligated to know. And what that means is you need to know these things so you know what's halal and what's haram in your life. And since we are talking about transactions and mu'amalat, and we're still with the book of Ibn Qudama Maqdisi rahimahullah, we reach the point where we talk about qard or al-qurud. And this subchapter deserves to be a book by itself, because that is one thing that a lot of people will take advantage of. And actually that is the main reason for the calamities most probably and the disasters that we are living in today in the world. When we talk about economical crisis, it's because of this issue. And when people decide to deviate from the way and the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah should send on them the diseases and the miseries. And that's what happens. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَةً. And he who turns his back to my remembrance and my dhikr and my commands, then he shall have a miserable life. Miserable life. And when the world decides to deal with riba and with the issue of usury and riba, and they give it different names and beautiful names, and APR and interest, they make it interest. They call riba and usury. That is the reason for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger to declare war on someone who takes it. فَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهُوا فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Allah warns those who deal with riba, if you do not stop, then be aware of a war from Allah and the Messenger. As some of the ulama said, on the day of judgment, he who eats the usury and eats the riba will be given a weapon, and he will be told to fight Allah and the Messenger. So who can do that? And who can tolerate that? On the other hand, we see that the whole world today, without any exceptions, even in the countries that the religion or number one religion is, or the official religion in their constitutions is Islam, and even with the countries that claim to follow the Sharia, you still find the banks of riba, and you find the transactions of riba. And it's even within the peoples and the individuals, there is no such thing as qard hasan anymore, and there is no such thing as I'll do you a favor, I'll help you out. It's all about dealing with riba and making money out of money and more money, and nothing will satisfy them except the dirt, as the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So when we talk about al-qurud, if we want to translate into debts or lending and borrowing, loans, all these things fall into or under the topic that we're about to speak about. And it's very significant because a lot of transactions and a lot of things that we are dealing with today in our daily life involves these things. Okay, involve these things. You want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, you want to even buy something small like a bedroom or whatever. A lot of things, and we have the opportunity. And if you look around, you see that everywhere they're offering financing, stuff like that. They're offering no payments until 2011 or 2012, whatever it is. But it's all debt, it's all loans. And you need to know exactly, are you dealing with haram or dealing with halal? Is it worth it, the bedroom that you're going to sleep on and you're going to feel comfortable at night? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preparing for you a bed from hell? Is it worth it? Is it worth it that car will take you from one place to another in haram, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preparing a vehicle for you in hellfire that you will be carrying behind and you will be dragging your intestines with? So all these things we have to understand, and we have to be aware, and we have to know exactly what's halal and what's haram, and we are obligated. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us the messenger and sent us the book of Allah and His book for us to know these things. So inshallah we will discuss these issues in detail, and we will go further than what the author rahimahullah ibn Qudama had mentioned, because as we said from the beginning that he tried to be brief in this book, in Umdat al-Fiqh. He tried to be brief and he would not go into details. And for he who's interested in more details, there are bigger books like Al-Muhallal ibn Hazm and Al-Mughni ibn Qudama himself too, where he goes even and Majmu' Imam Shafi'i. So all these things that you can go, if you want to go deeper, you can learn more. But inshallah we will try to add some of those information and bring them to you, because it's a very important issue and very important topic. So inshallah على بركة الله we start with القروض. قال المؤلف رحمه الله تعالى عن أبي رافع رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم استسلف من رجل بكرا فقدمت عليه إبل الصدقة، فأمر أبا رافع أن يقضي الرجل بكرة، فرجع إليه أبو رافع فقال لم أجد فيها إلا خيارا رباعية، فقال أعطوه فإن خير الناس أحسنهم قضاء، ومن اقترض شيئا فعليه رد مثله إن كان مثليا، ويجوز أن يرد خيرا منه للخبر، وأن يقترض تفاريق ويرد جملة إذا لم يكن شرطا، وإن أجله لم يتأجل، ولا يجوز شرط شيء لينتفع به المقرض إلا أن يشترط رهنا أو كفيلا، ولا يقبل هدية المقترض إلا أن يكون بينهما عادة بها قبل القرض. So this is the statement of Ibn Qudam, and this really involves too many ahkam and too many issues. However, before we start talking about this topic, we need to go into some introduction about al-qurud and what we mean by al-qurud and what it's really stand for before we start talking about these details. First, the definition of al-qard. Lughatan, in the language, in the Arabic language, al-qard means al-hadd wal-qat'. Okay? It means al-hadd wal-qat'. It means to cut. Al-qard means to cut. Like al-miqrad, like al-qawarid, those animals that usually have teeth to cut, like rats and mouse. So, qard, that's in the language. And maybe, if it's related to the issue that we're talking about, maybe because al-qard or loan or lending usually cut the need of the person who's borrowing. It cuts his need, maybe. But in Sharia, and that is what's important to us, what is the meaning of al-qard in Sharia? يقول يعني بعض العلماء تمليك مال لمن ينتفع به ويرد بدله. تمليك مال لمن ينتفع به ويرد بدله. That is the definition. And what that says is to give to someone money that becomes his possession. Okay? To allow someone to possess money, so he can benefit from it and he will return it, or will return what's similar. Okay, we'll return something and we'll give something in return. We'll return it back, we'll give it back. Again, تمليك مال لمن ينتفع به ويرد بدله. So we have different parts of this definition. First, to make him possess it. Because some of the ulama have different definitions, and that's what they say, إعطاء مال. To give money to someone to benefit from it, and then he will return it. Now this can be other than qard. Can be عارية or rent. You give him money to benefit from it, and then he will return it. But the difference between the first definition, which is the more accurate, is he becomes or he has possession of it. It's his now. It's his. When you give someone a loan, it's his. The money is his. He has the right to do whatever he wants. But if I give someone money and I dictate on him what to do with it, that is not qard. And he has to return it. Alright? So that is where the definition of possessing it, that means he has full control over it. Okay? He's the owner of it. To benefit from it, or to use it, and then to return it. And we will talk about, does he return the exact thing? Can he return it in a different manners? Can he return more? Can he return less? All these things we have to discuss. Because all these are issues that are very important and very connected to our daily activities. Even we don't see it, but sometimes it's very clear. Alright. Hukm al-qard. What is the rulings of al-qard in Islam? And when we say hukm al-qard, hukm al-salam, hukm al-buyu', all these things, what we mean by that, is it wajib? Is it mustahab, the recommended? Is it mubah, permissible? Is it makruh? Is it haram? These are the 5 things. So anything in Islam falls into one of those. Salah, dhuhr, which one? Wajib. Sunnah, Sunnat al-Fajr, which one? Witr, khilaf. اختلف العلماء. Difference in opinion. Okay? But the issue is, anything that you do can fall into those. Eating, mubah, sometimes wajib. Alright? So it's very important that we need to understand. So when we talk about al-qurud and loans and debts, borrowing and lending, we have to understand, is it a must? Someone asks you, do you have to lend him? If you ask, do you have to ask? Or you're not allowed to ask? So as you can see, the hukum of al-qurud depends on the muqrid. المقرض له حكمه والمقترض له حكمه. In other words, the borrower has his own hukum, and the lender has his own hukum. And sometimes the hukum is different for one of them. For example, in general, for someone to lend is mustahab. That's the hukm, recommended. And the adillah are clear and multiple. من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا. Who is he to lend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give Allah qard hasan? Okay? That is a hadith. That is an ayah in the book of Allah. That is a dalil. Alright? So all the adillah and the dalil that he mentioned, Ibn Qudama, the hadith of Abu Rafi', that is also a dalil. So in general, to lend someone money is mustahab, recommended. However, sometimes it's haram. And sometimes it's wajib. So we are talking about the two sides, the two edges of the spectrum. So in general, it's mustahab, it's recommended, which means you're not obligated. If I come to you and tell you to lend me $10,000, and I need, for example, to pay my rent, you're not obligated. It's recommended that you help me out. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man farraja an mu'minin kurba, farraja Allahu anhu kurbatan min kurabi yawm al-qiyam." He who helps a Muslim through a hardship, Allah will help him through a hardship on the day of judgment. So all these adillah and more. So it's mustahab, but sometimes it's wajib. If I need to borrow money to feed my kids, if my kid's gonna die from hunger, if I'm gonna die from, you see me that I'm dying, and if I don't get this money to save my life, then it becomes obligatory. Alright? On the other side, it can be haram. If I come to you and I tell you, lend me $10,000, Now, in general, you're not required to ask why the person is borrowing the money. Alright? You're not required. So someone, a brother comes to you, lend me $5,000. If you want to lend him, you pick those $5,000 and you give it to him. You're not required to. But sometimes knowing the person who's borrowing the money, who's asking for the money, you know his situation, you know what he does, you know what his life is all about, that will give you an idea. So you might go further and ask him why you want the money. And this, subhanAllah, happened last week with me. Brother called me and he wanted to borrow $10,000. It's like that. For some reason, when people call me, they don't talk about change. 10 or up. It's what? It's what? Yani subhanallah, one brother called me one time and he told me, I need some money, help me out. I need to pay, he's in debt. I said, okay, what are you talking about? He said, whatever you got. Whatever I got. I said, what you mean? He said, 10, 15, 20. $20. Sometimes you have to play stupid because it's just amazing. I know this person, this brother who called me, deals with haram. His business is haram. But at the same time, I know he owns his house. And I know he owns his car. So I started thinking, most probably the money he's asking for the business. So when I said, khair inshallah, what's going on? He said, back rent. Back rent for his business, which is haram. I said, I can't help you. Just like that. You know my position, you know where I stand, I can't help you. Sorry. Sometimes it's embarrassing and I can't deny how much I felt embarrassed. You could have helped. Maybe not with $10,000, with 2, 3, whatever. But at the same time, you want to help. But وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Do not cooperate with disobedience, with ithm, with oppression, with aggression, with udwan, any way that you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in general, it's recommended. Sometimes it becomes wajib for the person to give and to lend money, and sometimes it becomes haram for him to give money, especially when he knows from the situation of the person asking, the borrower, that most probably he's going to use it in haram. You know someone who makes a lot of money from his business, but he's a gambler. And then he comes to borrow from you $10,000, $5,000. Most probably he's borrowing because he wants to play. So you want to say that, I'm going to lend him, he asked me. You are helping him. So be aware of this issue. Yeah.
You said that you don't have to ask, but is it haram to ask?
No. The question is, can you ask? There is nothing that forbids you from asking why you need the money for. There's no harm with that. Okay? But we're saying you're not obligated. Because here we're talking, okay, I don't want to be falling in haram. So do I have to ask everyone who asks me for money? No. You don't have to. Okay? The default is you don't have to. But if you suspect that money is going to be used in haram, then go ahead and ask. Also, some of the adilla, قل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما من مسلم يقرض مسلما قرضا مرتين إلا كانت كصدقتها مرة. That no Muslim gives a loan to another Muslim twice. But one of them will be sadaqah. Allah will count it as sadaqah. Usually when you give sadaqah, you don't get it back. But here you're getting your money back, and Allah will count it as if you gave it away. And that is to encourage giving. Now, this is for al-muqtarid or al-muqrid. Now, for al-muqtarid, when we say muqtarid, we're talking about the person who's borrowing. So al-muqrid is the lender. Muqtarid is the borrower. Alright? and those will be from أركان العقد, عقد الدين, عقد القرض. So for المقترض it's mubah. For the borrower it's mubah, permissible for him to borrow, permissible for him to ask for money, to borrow. Some of the ulama went to say it's makruh, it's not recommended unless there is a necessity and it's imperative that he gets that money. But in general, if something that he can get through with without borrowing, they said it's makruh. Why is that? Why is it makruh to borrow money? Yeah.
Because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum used to refuse to ask help from each other.
Okay.
And that gift is better than the hand that received.
All right. But here you're talking about loans. You're taking, but you're gonna give back. Not exactly as if you ask. All these hadith you guys mentioning maybe can be somehow connected, but in general those things that for beggars, for person who's asking for help, not necessarily beggars, but that's part of it. Someone who's in need. He's taking money because he needs to survive, not borrowing money because there's something going on in his life. All right. Usually, it's because there's a lot of warning of borrowing money with the wrong intention. Because a lot of people borrow and they don't pay back. And unfortunately, this is the main reason that Muslims don't give qard hasan anymore. He doesn't want to give a loan. He doesn't want to lend you money for the sake of Allah. Why? Because the majority have messed it up for the minor, for the people in need. Because there are a lot of Muslims out there who wants to live with other people's money. They have money, they want to save it, they want to keep it, they want to hide it. And he lives day to day by borrowing money from people. And that is something you see obvious in general. You find a person has enough money, for example, to pay for his bedroom, if we're going to go back to the bedroom, but because of the advertisement and because of the, he doesn't want to, why are you going to freeze $2,000, one shot and pay the bedroom? I'll pay it and I can use the $2,000. What $2,000 going to bring you anyway? Some people think that way. We're saying if the transaction is permissible and halal and no la ghubara alayh, and there is no doubt in it, there is no problem. But the ulama talk about it's makruh because of the warning. Like one of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says, من أخذ أموال الناس ينوي سدادها سد الله عنه ومن أخذ أموال الناس ينوي إتلافها أتلفه الله. So they said this is a warning for someone who borrows money. Someone who borrows money. This is a warning. So it's better to avoid it. That's why they made it, and some of the ulama said it's makruh. But in general, it's mubah. Why? Because of the dalil. Because of the Prophet ﷺ borrowing money. Alright? It's mubah.
Is it makruh probably because if the person dies, then he's going to be mu'allaq pending?
That is one of the things too. In general, it's the warning and wa'id of the person who borrows money if he doesn't pay it back. And one of the things, as the brother said, that when a person dies, he's on hold until his debt is paid off. And his debt should be paid from what he leaves behind before it's distributed. Okay? So it's very important to avoid that as much as you can, especially if you don't need it. But in general, it's permissible. It's mubah. Permissible. Now, talking about arkan al-qard, when we talk about this, al-qard, lending and borrowing, is a contract. Okay? It's a contract. So it has arkan. There are fundamentals and there's major parts of this contract. Pillars, if I could say, of this contract. One of them is al-muqrid, the lender, and muqtarid, the borrower. Okay? Muqtarad, what is being borrowed? The money. car, the service, as we will talk about. You can also borrow service. Alright? Because a lot of people think lending, borrowing is only money. We're going to talk about the opinions of the ulama about other things like services. And also, صيغة. The format of the contract. You say, I lend you this money for 6 months. You say, I accept. That is صيغة. Okay? Whatever you write, the contract that is written, that is صيغة. Now someone might ask, should we write down the contract? It's the sunnah. It's recommended. It's not wajib to write when you lend someone and get witnesses on it. Okay? إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل فاكتبوه. Okay? When you borrow something for a certain amount of time, write it. Okay? And then after that Allah talks about shuhud. Alright? وَاسْتَشْهِدُوا شَهِيدَيْنِ. So, it's the sunnah to protect the rights. That is one of the goals and one of the purposes of the Sharia. To protect the wealth of the Muslim. Okay? That is one of the main purposes of the Sharia. Protect his wealth, like protecting his blood, protecting his honor, protecting his aql. All these things, matalib Sharia. So, if writing down a debt or a loan will protect my rights, just in case, a lot of the brothers and a lot of the Muslims feel offended. Okay? Even if you're going to borrow $100, write it. Because you don't know what later on it's going to create. How many people, they will lend you $100 and somehow they forget, or the same day they lend someone else, and then when it's time to pay, he tells you, I thought I lent you 200. Things happen. People forget. Okay? So write it down so you protect yourself and protect your brother. And you should not be offended when the brother that's doing you a favor asks you to write it down. You should never be offended. And this is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this applies to every other transactions or contract if it's needed. Alright? So writing it is the sunnah, to write the loan on papers. Now, one of the issues that comes is this contract, عقد القرض, the contract of debt or lending and borrowing. There are some kind of contracts called contract tabarru', okay, voluntarily, if I can use the word, donation, and some contracts called عقود معاوضة, meaning I get something in return. I get something in return. Yeah, I give you something and I get something. So which contract do you think it is? The voluntarily contract, which is completely with no return, or it's the contract with return?
The qard?
Return.
You want to do it?
When we talk about qard, we're talking about qard al-hasan. We're talking about a qard that doesn't involve riba. We're talking about qard in Islam.
With return.
With the return? Why?
Because it's qard, you have the intention to return it back.
Alright. But you're getting back exactly what you get.
You said you're going to go in details about that. Too sharp.
This guy's gonna share.
Yeah, but we know about al-qurud, and every Muslim knows that when you lend, you get back.
Same thing.
Yeah. So you go with the opinion that it's aqd mu'awada. That means you get something in return. Why? Because you're going to get exactly what you gave.
Doesn't have to be exactly what you're going to get.
In general, almost. So there is not really benefit for the lender.
Not in this.
Material.
Besides material. Because when we talk about return, we're talking about what the physical thing we're lending, muqrad. That is one way to look at it. That, you know what, I'm going to get it back. Okay? That means it's aqd mu'awad. That means I give and I get something in return, which is the same thing. The other people or the other group of ulama who look and they said عقد تبرع, they said it's completely voluntary, completely of no return. Which what they mean, no return on what I give, no extra over what I give. Alright? But usually if you look at the contract, Wallahu a'lam, it involves both. In the beginning, when you lend, you have no intention of getting something extra. So that will make it tabarra. Okay? Completely with no return. At the end, you're gonna get your money back. And sometimes it's a gain when you get your money back. How many of us have lent some money and it's hopeless? You don't pay zakah on it, by the way. You don't expect it, right? But once you get it, it's a gain. So at the end, it's aqd mu'awala. Alright? Whatever it is, and the ulama have just to mention this, it's really not that significant in our issue. Now, al-muqrad, which is the thing that we are borrowing and lending, does anything can be lent and borrowed, or there are specific things that we cannot lend and borrow?
Specific things.
Huh?
Specific things you can lend and borrow.
He cannot
Okay.
lend them.
So give me one thing that you cannot.
Your wife.
That's not a thing.
Straight up answer.
Your kids.
Well, if we can sell. Alright. There's something called al-mathaliyat. Some of the ulama said only those things that you can lend and borrow, because you can get the same in return. When we say al-mathaliyat, meaning anything that can be weighed, anything can be volume. Okay, this is a volume, this is hajm, or this is a weight, this is a square foot, or square cube of, or liter of milk. Liter of milk is hajm or weight?
Wait.
Volume. Volume. Okay, or this is 10 pounds of dates. That is weight. Because that means we can exactly return the same thing. Or something ma'dood. Something that we can count. Alright? These are 10 breads. I lend you. You return them. 10 breads. Alright? Stuff like that. So some of the ulama stuck and they said this is the specific thing. Okay? And mazru', something that can be planted, because most probably it comes out the same. Some of the other ulama said that is not only the thing. And actually the hadith of Ibn Qudamah shows otherwise. Okay? So we have mathaliyat and we have qimiyat. Things that have value. We can lend and borrow those as well. Here the Prophet ﷺ borrowed a camel and returned camel. Different camel. Okay? We'll talk about the hadith. Different, older, healthier, more productive, better. Okay? So, here the Prophet ﷺ borrowed other than mathaliyat. So that means anything that at the end we can estimate what's similar to it to return and pay back, it becomes permissible to borrow and lend. Okay? So that is what, so for example, the ulama said you're not allowed to borrow or lend natural precious stones. Why?
Value fluctuates.
Change of value.
People see things differently. Okay? The same stone, you take it to 3-4 jewelers, everyone can give you different price. So there is no way to get the exact thing to return, or even close. Alright? Stuff like that. So you can think about. Manafi'. What's about services? Can we lend and borrow services? What does that mean? You're fixing your house, and you tell me, come over tomorrow. I'm fixing my house. Come over and help me out. We start at 9, we finish at 5. We start at 9, we finish at 12. And then I promise you, the next time you have a project at your house, I'm gonna help you the same.
5 hours.
That's borrowing and lending. Now some of the ulama said this is not allowed. You cannot borrow his time. You cannot borrow him. And they went on into details. Some of them said because those two are not equal in power, they're not equal in strength, they're not equal in proficiency, they're not equal in skills. So most probably one will benefit more than the other. So here we have extra over the qard, that is riba. Any qard will bring benefit is riba. Alright? Any qard will bring benefit with it is riba. And we're talking about benefit, not the ajr and all that. Benefit, physical. So they said, the other side of the ulama, including Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, they said these are some of the things that are overlooked. Overlooked. People when they want to lend their services to each other, we should overlook these exact details and stuff. Whatever he can help with, he helps, and then he pays him back by helping him when he's needed, or when he needs it. All right. So overlook, and Wallahu a'lam, this is the right opinion, and no need to, like, you don't see someone say they're fighting, and the reason is I helped him painting his house that 4 rooms, and when he helped me with 3 bedrooms or 3 rooms in my house. You don't see people overlook these things. All right. Now, the other issue that we need to know is delaying al-qard. Okay. Can I delay? And that is where he talked about ta'jil and adam al-ta'jil. Now, what we mean here, because if I ask 90% of you, you will think I'm talking about something. That is not really what I'm talking about. What do you think I mean by delaying al-qard? Delaying the loan. If it's permissible or not.
Paying it back.
Okay. So which means what? Delaying from what?
Different time.
Time.
Which time?
Okay.
The time that the lender, you and the lender accepted that you're going to return the money, and then you went over that time.
You guys agree?
Yeah.
Alright, so it's not 90%, it's 100%. Alright. When the ulama talk about is it permissible ta'jil al-qard or adam al-ta'jil, they are talking about if I lend you money, we can agree, let's say after 6 months you pay me back, right? But the issue they're talking about here, do you have the right as a lender to come any minute to take your money, to ask for your money? That's what we're talking about. When we saying about delaying or ta'jil or postponing, meaning am I obligated as a lender to wait on the time we agreed on for you to pay back, or I have the right to inquire about my money or to order or to request my money whenever I want? Some of the ulama have that opinion, that if I lend you $100 and I say you pay me next month and we agree, some of the ulama said you, the one who lend the money, has the right to go the next day, even the next hour, to ask for your $100. It's one opinion.
That's fine, he's not gonna find it.
Huh?
It's fine, he can go ask, but he's not gonna have it.
Sometimes it does. Why not? I lend you $100 and you pay me, we agree, pay me in 2 weeks. Then once I leave you, I meet that brother. Oh, how you doing? What did you do today? I met so-so. He asked me what I lend him. Oh, don't lend him money. The last time I lent him was 10 years ago. He hasn't paid you. You're going to go back and ask for your money, wouldn't you? Alright? Or you're going to say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Okay?
That's why.
Or say takbir. 4 takbir. Takbir al-janazah. Alright? So some of the ulama go with that. The other opinion is no. Muslimun ala shurutihim. Whatever we agreed on in the contract, that is what it is. And that is closer to the truth. And that's what serves the intention. And that's what serves the goal. If someone is borrowing money because he needs to buy a car, to take his kids to school, to run his errand, to run his business, whatever, and he pays you in a year because that is what he's planning to save, and then you go to him after a month. I want my money. The only thing in front of him to do is to sell that car. And most probably you're going to sell it and lose him. Alright? So no. The right opinion is it's permissible. It's not the right of the lender to ask for his money right away or before the date agreed on in the contract. Meaning, when we say ta'jeel, meaning immediate. You cannot ask, okay, for the immediate. They said Imam Ahmed has mentioned that كل قرض فهو حال. The opinion of Al-Hanabila is what I mentioned first. And what that is, كل قرض فهو حال, meaning that every loan is immediate. Meaning the lender has the right to ask for his money immediately, whenever he wants. And that is the opinion of Al-Hanabila, and the opinion of Al-Jumhur is the other way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى. Oh, you believe when you borrow or lend each other money, or you borrow money to a specific time, to a certain time, to a time that is later agreed on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here makes it clear, إلى أجل مسمى, because this is the intention of borrowing. No one tells you, lend me money right now and I'll pay you in a minute. Alright? Okay? Usually he needs time to collect or to make some money. So إلى أجل مسمى, to a future date that is agreed on and mentioned. Alright? And that is the dalil. والمسلمون على شروطهم also. رد القرض. Now we talk about the issue of paying back. Okay? The issue of paying back. The first issue is when we talk about المثليات. We said, some of the ulama said, only you can lend money, or you can lend and borrow things that can be weighed, volumized, counted, mazru'. Okay? They said those are the only things. And we said the other opinion is more. But when we're talking about these things, you return them exact. Because it's possible. Again, giving the same examples. If I lend you a liter of milk, you return it to me a liter of milk. Okay? If I lend you 10 loaves of bread, you give me back 10 loaves of bread.
Milk can be cow milk.
I remember in dental school, we were studying, I think, emergency class. And the teacher said, if a patient calls you, or the mother of a kid calls you and tells you, my son was playing football and he hit himself and his tooth came up, you should tell her, put it in a cup of milk and run to my office. That's what you do. Put it in milk and run.
The kid or the two?
So student raises it. Is it skim milk? Half percentage or whatever? I really have no idea. I don't even drink milk. Alright? So he asked about it. So that's the same thing. The same. Because they're different prices, right? Right?
Definitely.
1% and half percent.
But I can tell you.
Brother Ma'in, you sell milk?
No, but they're different prices.
And shit.
And if it's the one that no hormone, that's twice the price.
So you have to detail part of the contract.
Even more than
Alright. So when we talk about method or mithliyat, we're talking about returning the same thing. Okay? Returning the same thing. Now, I said counted. Someone might, maybe will ask, why he didn't talk about money? That's what people borrow. They borrow and they lend each other money. And we count money because money is different thing. Why?
Because it has different value. From
Changes values. And we will talk about specifically by itself. Now, issue. Am I obligated? If I lend you something, am I obligated to take it back? Or I have the choice? What that means? There are some things someone will borrow from you and he will put into use. By the time he gives it back to you, it's not exactly what he gave you. So am I obligated to take it the way that it has become, or ask for the way it was when I gave it to him? Because now it's different value. For example, simple example. We're in class together, going to school, we're in second grade, whatever it is. You borrow my pencil. You borrow my number 2 pencil at this long. You give it back to me at the end of the day and it's this long. And maybe it's only the eraser left, right? Am I obligated to take that pencil? Or I have the choice? Some of the ulama said, you are obligated. But the other opinion is you have the choice and it's better to take it. Alright? You have the choice to ask for exactly what you gave. Because this way we can measure. We can know. I know exactly what I gave you. So you return it to me the way. That is al-qard. That is the way al-qard should be. وَرَدُّ الْبَدَلِ وَيَرُدُّ بَدَلَهُ. We said in the definition of al-qard, the last part, يَرُدُّ بَدَلَهُ. Yani he returns something and he gives something in return. Something similar. Expected to be. Alright? So they said, you're not obligated to take the new pencil, that small pencil, the midget pencil. You can request. But it's okay if you take. It's recommended. Because it's from al-ihsan. Alright? Especially when you lend him the pencil, that is what you expected, but you didn't expect it for him to go and just in the sharpener all the way. Alright? So that is one of the issues needs to be understood.
Even if you dissatisfy the contract or agreement?
نعم.
Even if you did not satisfy the agreement or contract, you agreed on getting back a certain thing. You agreed on getting back.
That, yeah. As a lender?
Right.
Okay. If we, for example, I lend you my pencil, and this is just a small example. Most probably when I lend you a pencil, we're not going to write a contract. But I lend you something bigger than a pencil, and we write in the contract, you return it the way it is. It's 20 centimeters and eraser that is full and all that. Right? This is just an example. When you bring it back, if it's less than that, me as a lender, I have the right to accept it and waive the difference, forgive you. And the other, it's a point that is we will have to talk about and discuss, and that is what today in some loans they call it what? Some loans they call it forgiveness policy, forgiveness part of the contract. If you pay me earlier, I forgive you a certain amount. You all heard about it, right?
Right on.
And we will talk about that, where it stands in the Sharia. That is your question. Answer your question. Inshallah. Alright. Now, what's about money? Borrowing, lending money. When we talk about money, we talk about gold. You know how money used to be in gold and silver. Dinar is gold, dirham is silver. And then there are other coins from other stuff. Copper, iron, brass, whatever it is. Who knows what they used to call those? Everyone should know. Give me the plural.
Loose.
Fulus. Yeah, when you go for Hajj, fulus. Okay? So, talk about gold, dinar, dirham, silver, and everything else, brass, copper. They used to call it fulus. Okay? But here specifically we're talking about gold and silver, and today we're talking about money, paper money that we dealing with. It's really a very complicated issue, and for a long time the ulama are going to continue discussing. But we can limit the situation with money, okay, into three scenarios. Okay? All right. First scenario. If the money gets cancelled. Does that happen? Yes. Okay? The president, the king, whoever it is, the government comes down and say, the money that you all guys using, we will cancel. Okay? We will deactivate. Whatever they want to call it. Now, if I lend you $1,000, that will be cancelled. Okay? Mr. Obama comes tomorrow on TV and he said we're going to cancel the American dollar. And we're going to create the new dollar, which is called dirham.
Euro.
No, you guys didn't hear about
America.
Canada and Mexico. Yeah. What is it called?
Americano.
Americo or America or whatever.
Americano.
Americano.
America.
Americano.
It's going
Anyway, now if it happened that you lend me $1,000, American dollars. Now, Obama said it's cancelled. Now, when they cancel, usually this is just the fictional situation, but sometimes it happens. I give you where it happened. Usually, when they want to change the currency, they will give a notice, right? Usually, even if the due date comes and people do not use it in their transactions, you still can take it to the bank and they will change it for you, usually. So it's really very fictional and unrealistic situation. But one of the situations that it did happen in Iraq, that before the invasion, the second war, they had the dinar Iraq. Overnight, the government issues that no more. You cannot use it in the country anymore. Imagine those people whose business was currency exchange. They had millions. Okay? Imagine people who borrow, people who lend, and they issued a new currency. Now very much the new currency that they issued is photocopied. Actually what happened then is Uday and Qusay, Saddam Hussein's kids, they had the access to those printers. So they went and they printed. And they went into the market. Like they went into jewelry places and they bought all the gold in the market with copies. No. That became the currency in Iraq. That the one that is used. That's why it dropped. The Iraqi dinar dropped from $3 to pennies, even less. You know, I saw with my own eyes people carrying bags of Iraqi dinars on the street, dragging bags because of no work. All right. So that situation can happen. So what do we do in that situation? How do we pay back? All right. Now, the ulama said, if the currency is gold and silver, then this way you have to pay gold and silver. Because most probably that gold and silver, okay, they don't use that coin anymore. You go and you take it to a jeweler, he melts it for you, he makes you a jewelry, he makes you whatever, and you can get some closer to the value of it. All right. But when it's papers like that, you can do nothing about it. Okay, you can do nothing about it. And that is where the discussion is so long amongst the ulama, what we should do in this. So, if you borrow gold and silver, and coins of gold and silver, and we don't have that anymore, just to mention it because the ulama mentioned it, and then that currency is cancelled, then you still have to pay back the same amount in value. In value. يعني يرد المثل بالقيمة. مثل القيمة. Alright? So, if I borrowed 10 dinars of gold, those 10 dinars, if I was to melt them, they will give me this amount of money, then that is what you pay. Okay? Because still, even though it's cancelled, you still can get your money. Okay? From that gold. Now, what if what's cancelled is the fulus? Has no value if you melt it. You know? Copper, brass, iron, whatever. So they said, now, you pay the value. The value. Okay? With the gold and silver, you pay the value of the gold and silver. With the fulus, you pay the value that it was worth, not the value of the weight of the copper. Now, a new question rises here.
How do you evaluate?
How do I value it? Is it its value? Now here we're talking about a situation that it's cancelled. Is its value when we borrowed or lend? Is it its value when it was cancelled? Or is it its value when I'm about to pay you? Alright, you see? Because these are three different values. Of course, it's not when I'm about to pay you because it's already cancelled, so it has no value. Alright? So that is where the difference comes. The two opinions. Its value when you borrowed it. Because maybe you borrowed, now let's talk about dollars then, because that's the same thing. You cannot just go melt the dollar, right? Unless it's silver or gold. You borrowed from me 5 years ago $1,000. Okay? 5 years ago, $1,000 is worth way more than $5,000 today. We all agree, right? Okay? So now it's time for you to pay me back. I ask and I say, listen, the 5,000, you can give me the 5,000 I lend you, but really it's not that worth. 5,000 then I could have bought a car. Today I can't buy a suit. Just in general, examples. Alright? Now the ulama have opinions here. Some of the ulama. Now this situation is not cancelled. Okay? In this situation, we're talking about fluctuation in value over time. What is that called in business?
Inflation.
Inflation. Alright? So, some of the ulama said, you are obligated to return the exact amount.
Even with a discrepancy?
With the inflation, you mean? Yes. Some of the ulama said that. Why? Because they said, money is mathaliyat. We count them. Until this point, I still did not mention money in there. Money is in al-qimiyat, meaning things that are valued, and their value change. 5 breads are 5 breads. Okay? And there the difference is very minute over years. But when we talk about dollars, when we talk about money, currency, over years it changed. Okay? Changed significantly. So that is why they did not count in mithliyat. Because mithliyat, what happens when you have to pay back? The exact you took. But with al-qimiyat, the things that have value in that sense, that we can value and their value changes, they said, so the other opinion said, you pay him back what it's worth today. It's an opinion, and it's very valid opinion. Okay?
But how do you decide how much it's worth right now? The $1,000 you bought last
You
year.
can.
There's a value.
That's the,
That, okay, so that's not considered interest then?
no, based on their opinion, it's not.
And the
Okay.
question was, do you value it against gold or you go with the value that they use in the market?
That's what it is, the market. Okay? What does it buy and sell today? What $5,000 then bought and sold, and what $5,000 today is buy and sell? Okay? That is an opinion. Usually when the discrepancy is not big, just stick to the same amount. Yeah.
I can add something, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
It's- Now the dollar has an index that tracking.
Okay.
So if, let's say you borrowed the $5,000, let's say 5 years ago, we can go back to the same time, the same day, and we can see where the dollar was standing, and then, of course, you're going to see that it went down.
Calculate what $5,000
Yes.
equal today.
Yes.
They sell those calculators? Alright?
T130.
I never know how to use it. Alright? So these are the situation. But a lot of the ulama stick to that you borrowed $5,000, you pay $5,000. Okay? So, thing one, Sheikh Al-Albani goes with the other opinion, that you pay the value. Now, those who said you pay exactly what you borrowed, they said just to prevent any kind of disputation, any kind of tension, any kind of arguments, any kind of hard feelings, ill feelings, and that's one of what the Sharia wants in transactions. Wants to avoid this. So maybe he borrowed 5,000. If you say it's worth 5,500 today, he gonna give it, and then something in his heart. He gonna forget that you gave him 5,000 when 5,000 were 5,000. All right? Yeah, charge of riba. Okay? So you pull him out of bankruptcy and he's millionaire, mashallah, because of your $5,000, and now you charge riba. He's upset. So that's where the other opinion that just take what you lend and ask Allah for the riba. All right. One of the things the author rahimahullah said in the first statement that we read, just to read again, عن أبي رافع أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم استسلف من رجل بكرة فقدمت عليه إبل الصدقة فأمر أبا رافع أن يقضي الرجل بكرة فرجع إليه أبو رافع فقال لم أجد فيها إلا خيارا رباعية فقال أعطوه فإن خير الناس أحسنهم قضاء. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, Abu Rafi رضي الله عنه, said that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم borrowed from a man a camel, small camel, baby camel, okay, bakra, baby camel. Then camels came to the Prophet ﷺ from sadaqah, you know, meaning zakah. People give zakah. If they have animals, they give animals. So the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Rafi, go and check in the Ibil zakah, Ibil sadaqah, if you find bakra, the same one he gave us, similar in age and in characters, and give it to him. So Abu Rafi came and told the Prophet ﷺ, I didn't find that young camel, okay? But I find khiyar al-raba'iyya, older camel, better, can produce, can assist, can farm, all that, which is obviously more expensive, more weighs more, so it can sell for more, so it's more value. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, give it to him. So now we see there's a difference between what you took and what you're giving back. Alright? وَيُرَدُّ بَدَلًا. So this is one of the situations. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, أَعْطُوهُ فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ النَّاسِ أَحْسَنُهُمْ قَضَاءً. Give it back to him, because the best of the people are the best when they pay back. You know what? We don't want you to give extra. Just give what you took. For God's sake. Wallah. And I say it from bleeding heart. Give what you took. And the warning of the Prophet ﷺ is serious. من أخذ أموال الناس ينوي سدادها سد الله عنه. He who takes the money of people with the intention to give it back, to pay it back, borrow money to pay, Allah will help him to pay. Wallah, if you have intention, sincere intention, Allah will help you to pay. And he who takes the money of people with the intention of destroying it. Destroying it for the other person. If you take his money and you plan not to give it back to him, you have destroyed his money, as if you burned it. Allah will destroy it. So be aware of that. Okay? And we all know the story in Sahih Bukhari. The Jewish man who borrowed came to his brother and he said, lend me 1,000 dinar. So he gave him. He said, bring me a witness. He said, Allah is my witness. He said, Allah is sufficient as a witness. He said, give me a guarantor. Someone to guarantee. If you don't pay, I'll get it from him. He said, Allah is my guarantor. Allahu Akbar. He said, Allah is the best guarantor. Except, he gave him the 1,000 dinar. The date was for them to meet so he can pay, and there was a river between them. The man who borrowed the 1,000 dinar got his 1,000 dinar, and he went to the river or to the water to cross, and he didn't find a boat to carry him to. So he said, oh Allah, I borrowed money from him and he asked me for a witness. I said, you're my witness. And he asked me for a guarantor. I said, you're my guarantor. Then he took the 1,000 dinar. He got a log, a log of a piece of wood, and he carved it. He put the 1,000 dinar, and then he sealed it, and he threw it in the water. Ya akhi, yaqeen, ajib. Yani certainty and trust in Allah, ajib. He threw it in the river, and he went back home. The man, on the other hand, waiting for his money, and he was in need. And he waited, and the guy didn't show up. So he's returning home upset, disappointed. That's it. He sees the piece of wood. He said, well, I'm already here. I take it so we can use it for 5. He picks, and the man wrote, I forgot, he wrote a letter in it. So the man comes back, break the wood. He finds 1,000 dinars with the letter. The other man, the first man, still, just to make sure, he gets another 1,000 dinar the next day, and he comes to the man to pay him. Look at the trust. So he said, this is your 1,000 dinar. He doesn't tell him about the story. This is your time. He said, go home, saddallahu ank. He said, keep your money. Allah has paid it off already. That is when the intention is there to pay back. Alright? So that's what we ask the people. Because that is unfortunately something that we feel. People don't want to lend money anymore, even pennies. Because either they had bad experience, either the people are bad out there. And as I said, there are some people live with other people's money and their money is saved. Why? And that is actually, it's not borrowing anymore, that's begging. And that is haram. And we'll talk about it. Alright? Okay. So here the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of the people is the best when he pays back. The best he returns a favor. Someone did you a favor. Do it again to him. Do him better. Give him a gift. Whatever. So, just the way the Prophet said. وَمَنْ اقْتَرَضَ شَيْئًا فَعَلَيْهِ رَدُّ مِثْلِهِ إِنْ كَانَ مِثْلِهِ. And he who borrows something, then he has to pay it back similar. If it's from mithliyat. Something can be weighed or that we talked about. وَيَجُوزُ أَنْ يَرُدَّ خَيْرًا مِنْهُ لِلْخَبَرِ. And he can give back something better. للخبر, meaning because of the hadith, the dalil. Baby camel, we gave him big one. وأن يقترض تفاريق ويرد جملة إذا لم يكن شرطا. And he who can borrow, it's permissible to borrow $1,000 one shot and pay it back in payments. That is okay. It depends on the agreement, as long as it's not the agreement. Meaning, as long as it's not in the agreement that after I give you $1,000 and after a month you give me $1,000, my $1,000 back. So here, a month come and he brings you $100. What's that? Brother, I mean, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنْ كَانَ ذُو عُسْرَةٍ فَنَظِرَةٌ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ. If he's going through hardship, then it's better to give him a break. Make it easy for him. But some people don't do that. He has the money, but he wants it in consignment. Right? He wants to finance it on you. So if the agreement is you pay me $1,000 after a month, that should be the agreement. But if we agree that you give me $1,000 today, I give you every month $100, if we agree on that, there is no problem. وَإِنْ أَجَّلَهُ لَمْ يَتَأَجَّلْ. Now what does that mean?
He wants more time, then the lender is in choice. No?
لا يلدغ المؤمن من جهله. That is the same issue. وَإِنْ أَجَّلَهُ لَمْ يَتَأَجَّلْ. That is the opinion of the Hanabila, we say. That once you lend the money, they said there is no ta'jil. As a lender, I have the right to ask for my money whenever I want. So here he's saying, إِنْ أَجَّلَهُ, يعني the borrower says, give me some time, he doesn't have to. But we said the right opinion is that whatever they agreed on. So if we agreed, I pay you back in a month, you don't have the right to come after 2 days and tell me I want my money back. Alright? Okay. ولا يجوز شرط شيء لينتفع به المقرض إلا أن يشترط رهنا أو كفيلا. And it's not permissible for the lender to put any condition that will give him a return on his loan. And that will be the topic of next week, inshallah. But just to start from now, you cannot. There is a hadith, and really it's not. They say it's hadith, but it's questionable. But the meaning is agreed on, and that is any loan, any قرض يجر منفعة فهو ربا. Any loan will bring benefit to the lender, then it's riba. Any loan will bring benefit to the lender, it's riba. So any loan that brings benefit to the borrower, is it riba?
No, it's supposed to bring
True. But also there's another situation is which we talked about briefly. We will talk about the forgiveness policy thing. Okay? That's benefit for the borrower. Alright? We'll talk about it. So here he's saying, which is right, that's the right opinion, any loan that brings benefit to the lender is riba. Except if the lender asks for kafil. He asks for a guarantor. If he asks for rahan, which is collateral. Alright? He said, I give you $1,000, but you put your car as collateral to guarantee my right. That is no problem. And we will talk about later on about the rahan. Is it permissible to benefit from a rahan or not? We'll talk about all these things. ولا يقبل هدية المقترض إلا أن يكون بينهما عادة بها قبل القرض. And it's not permissible to accept the gift from the lender, from the borrower. You as a lender, you're not allowed to accept a gift from the borrower. Why?
Because
If
that would influence his decision regarding giving
could be,
back the money.
but that's we're talking about after. So
So,
this is restricted. If he's giving you the gift because of the loan. But if you are friends and usually he gives you gifts and then he asks you now for money, but now the occasion comes again to give you a gift, no problem with that. But if he never give you a gift, right, he always asks you for gifts. And then he borrows some money from you and suddenly 2 days later he's bringing you a duck as a gift or something, you know? Well, you cannot accept that because most probably that's because of you lend him money. So here your loan brought you benefit. Okay? We'll talk about those last 3 points I mentioned next time, inshallah.
Kind of confused on this versus giving back better than what you
Yeah.
borrowed.
Because giving back better,
That's
we did not put it as condition. You see, the Prophet ﷺ gave an older camel, which is better camel, to the man. The man never asked, as a lender, never asked for that. The man expect what he gave, the small camel. But if the man said, yeah, I give you the small camel, but you have to give me back a big camel, then it becomes a riba.
Wouldn't that be sort of like a gift,
La,
give extra?
no, that we're talking about loan. Now, if I do it voluntarily as a borrower, there is no problem with that. Okay? But if you put it as a condition, that is a riba itself. That is, I mean, then we say, okay, when you borrow money from the bank, and they tell you, listen, we're going to give you $100,000, but you're going to give us 7% extra, you're going to say, oh, they're doing me a favor, so it's nice to pay them back, to give them something extra. But it's riba. Now, if they give you 100,000 until you give us 100,000 back, and you decide to give them 100,000 and another 1,000, no problem. We'll talk about those in details, all right? Which is what the Prophet ﷺ did as a gift. He did not put it as condition. We'll talk about that in detail. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم وصلى الله على محمد. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.